Hey guys, welcome to another Age of Wonders Planetfall unit unboxing. Today we're looking at the Syndicate Runner. So the Syndicate Runner, in my opinion, leaves a bit to be desired, both tactically and strategically in the early game as a scout unit for Syndicate. They have kind of I'll say a unique combination of skills that aren't really useless, but also aren't as good as some of the skills and abilities that some of the other units of this tier and in this class get from some of the other factions. So it's an interesting design. It works really well with the faction as far as how it's played, how they're kind of modeled, and what's effective with them. But let's take a closer look. So they're very cheap. It's a biological floating light infantry scout. The hallmark ability of this unit is found on the strategic map, which is universal camouflage. So it makes the unit, and of course not the entire army of that unit, invisible to opponents on the strategic map. So as you can imagine, there's quite a few things you can kind of do with this certainly for multiplayer games. But as far as kind of a base useful skill approach towards playing against AI and in the campaign, it's only so useful. Floating is kind of unique. It's sort of like flying. It's a bit of a light version of flying in the game. Everything works the same, used 4 movement per tile, but the only problem is for floating units, they can't go over mountains like a flying unit could. So something to remember there. The other thing is you'll see this unit has shields versus armor, and they more or less work the same. Armor is more useful in that it works whether you're in ranged or melee combat. Shields only work in range, but they also can prevent some of the psionic damage that can take place. So let's look at the active damage abilities for the runner. There's Pulse Pistol. It's a 7 arc damage, 90% accurate, 5 range. It repeats, and it's effective by line of sight. So I'd say arc channel damage is kind of average. It's useful against, more effective against mechanical units, less effective against ethereal, mineral, and plant type units. And it's a decent damage ability, I suppose. I mean, it has the ability to repeat, which is fine. It also combines slightly with the flanker passive. We'll talk about it in a second. But it's just an average skill, I'd say, at best. The Arc Bolus is their second option. It's a 5 arc damage, 100% accurate, 5 range, single action, single use, and it ignores line of sight. So the whole point of this skill is it has a chance to immobilize a target unit, which means they can't move, but they can take other actions on their turn. Tactically, it's kind of an interesting skill. You can use it for offense or defense, depending on the situation. But basically, it's not as useful as some of the other active skills found on units of this class and type from some other factions. The other thing to make note of here is, so their defense mode, shields up, is basically like the other unit's defense mode in the game. So it's, they're 25% harder to hit and they can't be flanked. But also the addition here is they're going to get two extra shields on this unit. So that's fine, but really the point of these units isn't to be mitigating damage, so it's only so useful in my opinion. There's 2 passive skills for the runner, and this is kind of where, in my opinion, the design of the unit is a little interesting, but also not very effective, at least tactically. So escape module, once per battle, the unit will regenerate 15 health and teleport up to 3 spaces away randomly if it otherwise would have been killed. So I always put these sort of skills in like a feedback loop category, where basically if your unit's going to be in a situation where it would otherwise die, and in this case it's going to be prevented based on this skill, chances are the combat's not going to go well for you anyways. So and this skill isn't going to be enough to turn the tide of that battle, in my opinion, at least most of the time. So it's just not a great ability here. Flanker is another one that kind of, I think, sounds better than it actually is. You basically are doing 25% extra damage to units that you're flanking when you're doing damage, but because the base damage here is so low on these units, it's not much of an increase. Although I will say, because you have a floating unit here, in this case with the runner, there are chances to move around the tactical map pretty effectively and find opportunities to flank the unit, which, and really part of a big core mechanic of the Syndicate faction, is finding and doing flanking damage to enemy units. So something to think of mind. So for progression for the unit, it's pretty basic, just like a lot of the other tier 1 units. You get 4 health and 5 accuracy, kind of iteratively through the levels. The other thing is at the prime level, you'll get evasive, which makes the unit 15% harder to hit. Which again, in my opinion, is kind of a mixed benefit, because you already have these other damage mitigation and sort of things at your disposal, right? So if your unit's harder to hit, it's even less likely to need to use the escape module, or using shields up or whatever. It just doesn't really do much. Not that it's not useful, but in this case, I just don't think it really moves the needle. These units are easy to preserve, obviously, because they have the built-in mechanics to do so. So you should get them, keep them alive and get them leveled up, and that's great. But there's really not much benefit to doing so. So again, tactically, I would say, just again, I don't think this unit is really that great compared to some of the other alternatives in other factions. It's definitely a cool design. They're kind of fun to use and somewhat challenging to use. I'm sure people that have tried using the Syndicate have kind of experienced this themselves, but it's just kind of an awkward unit. I will say, though, in multiplayer setting, it's super fun to try to set up situations where you're really kind of role-playing the faction, using your camouflage, gaining intel on enemy movement, potentially setting up traps where you can strategically flank enemy armies, and doing all that sort of stuff. So they're fun to use, they're fun to play with, but not the strongest unit. Hope you guys enjoyed that review of the unit. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching.